census. It's census time. Yeah, it started today, I think.
Oh? I haven't got anything on my doorknob yet.
You can go online. Ooh. Thumbs up, okay. It is 6 p.m. Good evening. Call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. First thing on our agenda is always the agenda. We are going to have to amend the agenda tonight. Alberta Health Services had to reschedule. So we are down to one delegation. So if I could get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I will move to adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Flowers. All those in favor? Carried, 4-0. And adoption of the minutes of our previous meeting. Councillor Reid.
I also move the adoption of the minutes as presented.
All those in favor of the minutes? Also carried. Thank you. It's moving right along into delegations. Tonight we have, as I said, we do not have Alberta Health Services, but we do have Cochrane Tourism. We have Joanne and Calandra with us this evening. Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Podium is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to present to you this evening at the delegation, mayor, councillors, and administration. This will be my last presentation to council as the outgoing executive director. Actually, that was a few days ago. So today I was retired, but I came to present anyways. We wanted to just give you an update on what happened this last year. And last week I sent you actually a report because we only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to talk about 3 key things. I think we do this. The 2023 impact, there's 3 things that I'm going to talk about, and then we're going to tell you how this all transitioned. So this year, we have never had the opportunity to do an impact assessment for the visitor economy. With Travel Alberta coming to Cochrane as one of the next tourism, part of the next tourism development zones, they actually did a bunch of research on data in our region to identify us as one of the best return on investments in the whole province. And we were able to use that data and gather some statistics as a benchmark. So these are some numbers that we gathered. $67.5 million is what the visitor economy contributes to our economy here in Cochrane every year, along with annual visits, overnight stays, jobs, and resident sentiment. With the town's investment of $100,000 in our operating grant, that basically is a great return on investment for the town, putting money towards what we do here at the Cochrane Tourism Association. Our tourism experience mentorship program is finished its 4th cohort. We have put 34 partners, which is local businesses, through the program. This year there were 4, but total 5 not-for-profits. And we have helped our local business community secure over $1.5 million in grants through participation in the tourism mentorship program. Additional funding through the program was secured, leveraging the town's funding that we received through our operational grant through federal and provincial funding, which included over $170,000. These are just a few of the experiences that we launched, and they all have amazing content, which is a big part of when I started in 2017. I was very grateful that the town was able to lend me some photos to showcase our building out our website and telling stories about Cochrane. Over the last 6.5 years, we've been able to create 49 signature videos. Those are on our YouTube channel, Explore Cochrane. And we launched them through a campaign last year and have garnered 315,000 views on those videos. We also have now an asset library of over 2,500 professional, high-quality images, and these we are now able to give back, and the town is able to use them through campaigns that you are doing as well. And through that, we've also been able to help 80 partners with the marketing imagery so they can use them on their assets as well. The Tourism Development Zone, Cochrane Tourism, we were basically the lead organization as the DMO. The next steps for this is stakeholder engagement, identifying investment opportunities in this zone, and through the DMO, through us being the destination marketing organization, management organization, excuse me, Travel Alberta has recognized that organizations like ours need increased funding through rural tourism development. And so that has reflected this year in the grant from Travel Alberta. It increased by 50%. So I come to our handover. After 6.5 years, basically I started the same time as this council in the first election. And over the last 6.5 years, we have had some amazing achievements with a internationally recognized brand for Cochrane. The province has recognized us as one of the rural destination emerging markets. And we have had some we've updated a strategy. And if you remember back in 2018, we presented that new strategy in partnership with the town. And council endorsed that strategy. And so we're excited about, annually we update the strategy just like the municipality does. And this year, our updated tourism strategy has some international recognition. And I'm gonna pass this over to the new executive director to tell you all about what's happening in 2024.
Thanks, John. Are we using this guy to move forward? Or here?
Yeah, just
So I want to share some of the opportunities we have looking forward, but the first thing I want to do is I want to share a little bit from the strategy. We've sent it to you. I'm not going to read it to you in its entirety, but I do want to share some of the new principles that we've established with the board, because they really show the intent as to what we'd like to do with tourism moving forward. So I'm just going to read these 3 core principles to you. First, we respect our sense of place and identity as stewards of this community, the culture, the economy, and the environment. Second, we take a collaborative approach by inviting, engaging, and nurturing intentional relationships as part of an interconnected network of community stakeholders. And third, our community lives here, and so do we. We commit to encouraging tourism that provides an exceptional experience for visitors while preserving our small town feeling and offering a positive impact for all. So those are the 3 principles that are guiding us forward. If you have a peek at that strategy, you'll see that there's a community pledge in there as well that includes some of these items. And really briefly, we've identified 3 pathways. I'm not going to get into our actions with you today, but the 3 pathways that we'll engage in to encourage tourism in our community is experience ecosystem development. That's just a fancy way of saying we need a few more things to do here in Cochrane, and we're going to continue working with our partners to create those things. Big on that list is more accommodations and also supporting the events in our community. The second is communication. We are the promotional agencies for our destination. We're going to do a little bit of work on earned media this year. And we're also going to spend some time communicating with our community so they realize what kinds of opportunities they have here to engage in tourism as residents. And then the third one is connectivity, and that's twofold. Literally, we need ways for people to get to Cochrane if they're going to come stay here, and I had a meeting earlier today about that, so that's something we're working on. But also connecting with all of the stakeholders in our community, because tourism really impacts so many different sectors. So a huge part of what we're doing this year is finding ways to connect those groups and participating in those connection opportunities. So Joanne shared that we had some international interest in our tourism strategy. I'm definitely inspired by our town's intent to bring innovation to our community, and that is no different in the tourism world. I've been watching an organization, as a tourism professional, I've been watching an organization called Destination Think for probably the past 5 years. And when we completed this, or updated this strategy, I reached out to Destination Think, and it was a bit of a serendipitous time because they had been creating significant strategies for destinations around the world, most of those strategies costing more than our annual budget, but they were feeling a little frustrated with these strategies getting shelved. Innovative, exciting strategies that as soon as leadership changed, they would go onto the shelf. So at the time that we got in touch with them, they're working on creating a collective of destinations that are dedicated to moving their destination management goals forward in a community-oriented way. And after seeing our strategy, they invited us to be part of that collective. So we'll be joining destinations like Copenhagen, Denmark, Cape Town, South Africa, Queenstown, New Zealand, Tofino, British Columbia, Bend, Oregon, as part of this collective. And the collective is exciting for 2 reasons. The first one is it's very action-focused. So we'll be going to quarterly meetings. We'll be working with these destinations from around the world to identify some of the things that we'd like to do from a destination management perspective. We'll set goals, and then we have to come back and tell them what we accomplished. In between that time, we're also going to have access to resources, global resources, as part of this program. The second piece that's really exciting about this program is that we'll have an opportunity to participate in an international marketing campaign with other destinations who are doing tourism for good. So we will be part of this campaign that is showcasing how you can use tourism as a lever to do good. Good for your community, good for the environment, good for your economy, all of those pieces where we can make change with tourism. So in addition to the Destination Think opportunity, Joanne has talked about Travel Alberta coming here. The province just released a tourism strategy in the past 2 months. They want to see tourism diversification in rural communities. Cochrane is a part of those destinations that have that opportunity, but we know that it is critical that there is alignment with the municipality and with the counties in the place where tourism is taking place. That's where Travel Alberta is focusing their investment, is in places where the community recognizes the opportunity, which is exactly why we're here today, is to share some of that opportunity with you so that you're aware. So we're at a bit of a precipice right now. We have this really exciting opportunity to grow tourism in a way that is designed to take care of our community. In the ThinkX collective, we're unique in that many of the destinations are trying to solve problems created by tourism. That is not our situation. Our situation is we have an opportunity to grow tourism while not creating problems. And I'm not going to tell you that there's no industry that, you know, is without problems, but we can create tourism in a way that is really intentional so that our community comes first. And there's opportunities for our community, and not just in the economy, which is important, but also in community wellness and opportunities for recreation and opportunities to preserve the culture that we have here. So we're engaging these opportunities on every level. On a municipal level, we're here talking to you, we're talking with the counties, we're working with our operators to help them develop experiences. On a provincial level, Joanne has talked about how much time she spent with Travel Alberta to have us recognized as a place where investment should come for tourism. Federally, we're working with funding partners to bring funding in for significant projects. And then on an international scale, we're working to show how Cochrane is an innovative destination that's doing tourism for good. But we're doing that all with one person and a volunteer board. And if we are going to engage in these opportunities, we are going to need more resources to do so. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have about tourism at this time.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I'll start off by saying, Joanne, I'm glad you came back out of retirement for 2 days to be here this evening so that we could have an opportunity to thank you. You're right, you've been at your job as long as this council has been at ours. At sometimes those times have flown by, and others they have gone by so slowly. But you should be so proud of the work that you've done and the legacy that you're leaving behind. You have taken tourism to the next level in Cochrane, and our hat and our thanks to you for, our hats off, and thank you to you for all that you've done. You should be proud.
Thank you.
And Calandra, welcome aboard. You've got big shoes to fill, but exciting to see the next step that tourism can take in Cochrane. And with that, I will open it up to questions. Councillor Reid, you've first to your light again, as usual.
Thank you. I too wish to thank you, Joanne. The mayor talked about kicking it up a notch. I think you've kicked it up 3 or 4 notches. And your colleague, I don't think has to fill your shoes, he has to fill your boots. In the Cochrane sense. But so thank you very much, sincerely. You've just been an incredible resource to the town and our community. I appreciate it. I had 5 questions.
Well, let's start with number 1.
Okay. And I appreciate both the report that you sent us and the one that was included in our agenda package. My questions are deriving out of the report in our agenda package. Okay. So the first question is on page 5. In the column it says, these achievements have positioned Cochrane as an emerging destination. I was wondering what the definition of emerging is in terms of tourism.
Do you want me to? So an established or a mature destination is somewhere like Banff. So they have a really built out tourism ecosystem. They're maybe at a point where they don't want any more investment or any more growth in their tourism destination. An emerging destination is a place like us where we still have opportunity to invest in tourism, to create tourism products, and to invite visitors to our community. So it's a maturity scale.
Okay, great, that makes sense to me. Now the second question is on page 6. And I really appreciate the foundations of your vision, mission, and what was the other category? Pathways. But in the vision, it says that Cochrane has a unique character. What is the unique character? Our Western heritage? Is that how you define unique?
It's actually the feeling.
Oh, right.
Truthfully.
How could I have forgotten that?
In 2017,
Right.
we went to the community and we asked the community, which we do regularly, and we asked the community what it is that they love about Cochrane. And it wasn't just our community, it was the people who visit here. And the first thing they would say is, I don't know, but it's just this feeling. And truthfully, for a marketing a location, we're like, how can we do this? Yeah. But it's real. Whether you live here, whether you visit here, whether you've been here for 40 years or you've been here for 2 months, people talk about Cochrane. And that's part of our character is, yes, we have Western culture. Yes, we have beautiful pathways. We have beautiful scenery, but it's ask anyone.
Yeah,
I don't know how to explain it.
It's a genuine feeling. I get it. I've forgotten that. The third question I had actually is a good segue into what you talked about in terms of pathways. So the second pathway has to do with communications, which I appreciate is a critical role in terms of tourism. But what I wanted to apologize for was I hadn't understood that the Nordic ski track was a priority that we were advocating for. Like this, admittedly, this was the first time I had heard of that. So
over the past few years, we have been working with different organizations on multi-million-dollar projects. And these projects are currently in various stages of development. So there's an Arts and Culture Center. We're still talking about river strategy. There is a Nordic ski track that has come to the top of the chain, actually. And we're working with different organizations to actually make that a reality. Nordic Canada, Ski Canada is here. They've done a look at the property, and as soon as a few things come into play, this is probably going to be something that's going to happen sooner rather than later.
That's a great segue into my next question, and that is communications and building on that, making the community aware and council aware. So having just recently experienced the Craft Hockey Bill with the mayor and seeing how much he did for our community on that, where he was everywhere, in the news, the radio, hockey, the Flames games. Wouldn't it be time to make the council aware of something like that Nordic ski track?
Absolutely. Truthfully, we've been working behind the scenes with many organizations for a very long time. And some of them are just ideas. And until they're actually something that is more of a realistic, achievable product, it's hard to bring it forward to say, here's a dream. Once we have a little bit, like I said, it's still in the stages, but there are some major projects that could be invested in Cochrane, and that would change the landscape for not only sports tourism, arts and culture, our amenities, like our business community would be strengthened by that through the visitor economy. So it really is, like I said, something that there needs to be investment to move those projects forward on multi-levels. Some of them are applying for grants. Until we have a solid foundation to say, yep, this is happening, it's hard to bring it forward.
Yeah, I would challenge that. I would think that this council are dreamers. We are dreaming about our community, not just now, not 5 years out, but 25 years out. And there's some things that take time to set a legacy for. And so my encouragement, personally, I don't know how my colleagues feel, but I would encourage you and your new executive director to bring those dreams forward, share it with council. You know, we just did a strategic planning retreat where we're talking about a 10-year capital plan. And if this had some, you know, indication that it might be something that we should be talking about, I would rather hear it sooner than later. But I understand what you've said. Just two more quick questions, I promise. So on page 9, it talked again about the communications pathway, about increasing awareness of Cochrane tourism with residents. How are we doing that? How is that actually occurring?
I'll take that one. Okay. So that will be a specific marketing campaign. So it's going to start in May with our trade show, and it'll flow out over the year. And I'm not going to get into details because they're not solidified yet, but it'll be a campaign that we invest in to invite Cochrane residents to talk about what they love in Cochrane, to invite them to share imagery or stories about what they love in Cochrane, and that'll be something that will be amplified through our media channels.
Okay. Last two, promise. The folklore research. In reading the introduction to that, is folklore actually spelled with 2 L's? The report only has 1. And when I went to research it online to see what this organization was, I could only find folklore with 2 L's. So does this group actually have experience in doing this kind of research?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have worked for various organizations like the Calgary Public Library, many in Calgary, many in Britain, and they bring a wealth of knowledge to our community in research. And this type of reporting, they were able, like I said, I will be benchmark, but it's also very estimated. And to do a real full-on economic impact assessment, right. I think in 2020, the town had $50,000 in the budget. And of course, you know what happened in 2020. Yeah. So we were able to gather some data and do an estimate of this through the data that they were able to put into government statistics because they have that knowledge. And so they're a great asset to our community.
Yeah, again, you might encourage them to actually set up a website that they can promote their company. But to the report itself, it actually says, you're right, in the second paragraph, first sentence, please note this document only provides an estimate. Yep. And I would say that, you know, if you're referencing the $67.5 million, You might want to put some kind of little footnote to that, that it is just an estimate and not unless the Alberta tourism number is actually more solidified than that folklore's.
To give you some benchmark on that, like Canmore is 392 million.
Yeah,
So we're
we're in there somewhere. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got it. Last question. Talked about resources then, a request for resource. So are we going to see something coming forth in this budget process? Like, are you asking for additional full-time body, or what's the request there?
well.
John's done.
Mic drop.
From what I understand at this meeting, I am not to forward a request to you specifically.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not asking for a specific request, but I'd certainly like to know what the ballpark is. Are we asking for another full-time body, or?
That would be very useful, though I'm not asking for it at this meeting.
Okay, understood. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
I can provide one piece of information. So the town gives us $100,000 annually. Travel Alberta gives us $100,000 annually. So a third of the budget comes from the town, a third from Travel Alberta, and a third from our other destination marketing fund and partnership programs.
So nothing from the county?
Nothing from the county
Okay.
at the moment. But Travel Alberta has recognized through their granting application, so through our destination management organization, we can apply, and they have increased that to $150,000 this year, which we've applied for, which Calandra has applied for. And so when we talk about the province wanting to work with municipalities on those projects, that's what they're going to be looking at is, will the county match that? Because the province is going to, and that will just help us to move this forward in a big way.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. You obviously read the report.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Flowers?
I don't have as many questions as Councillor Reid, but I wanted to say thank you, Joanne, for 6.5 years of hard work. I've watched you and saw how everything's grown, and you've really done an amazing job with the bit of money that you had.
Thanks, Susan.
So I look forward to seeing you out in the community and your photographs everywhere. The only question I had for Calandra was, do you get to go on all these trips to these countries that you're collaborating with?
No,
No. Oh.
but I'll experience them virtually.
I was thinking I should volunteer too. I'm looking forward to hearing what all you do in the future and seeing the growth here in Cochrane. Thanks for everything.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Also, just wanted to say thank you to Joanne. As you mentioned, one person and a volunteer board. It's a lot of things that have been done with that amount of horsepower, and we appreciate your efforts, and sorry to see you go. I had one question on my mind about two, I guess, tourist-related projects that really get me excited. They're big ones, and that's the Great Trail Project, which is the pathway that would connect essentially Calgary to Banff and beyond, and that's the passenger one, and then there's the Calgary Airport to Banff passenger rail project that's talked about. In my knowledge, perhaps one has more of a probability of coming to fruition than the other, but I think they're both beyond the point of being just something that we're speculating on. I think we're probably likely to see one or both in our not too distant future. So I just wanted to hear if there's any thoughts from Cochrane Tourism on what kind of game changer that would be for Cochrane. I imagine we're talking about, 100-fold game changer, like these are big things. And would it be more about just making Cochrane a stop along that pathway or rail? And any thoughts on those two projects that get me excited?
Yeah, I can speak to the rail, and Joanne, if you can speak to the pathway. The rail would be a complete game changer for Cochrane. It would absolutely change the tourism environment. One of the opportunities we have is that guests who are, when you go to stay in Banff in the summer, you're $800 to $1,000 for a room there. Canmore, you're $600, and Cochrane, you're $250. So there's an opportunity for visitors who want to spend less of their budget on accommodations for them to stay here. And it also means that there's just easier access to Cochrane. I also think it would encourage hoteliers to come to our area, and the opportunity to bring events to Cochrane, sports events, for example, would be significantly increased if that train came. If it's going to come to fruition, we just had a meeting with the Tourism Advocacy Association. I don't know. I would love to see it come to fruition. I'd say it's at an interesting point where they're really looking at, can this train be a commuter train, which is I think what we all want as a community, or does it have to be a luxury product, which then excludes much of us from the community? So I think that's what they're addressing right now. And of course, we'll be advocating for a train that our residents can use and that our visitors can use, because our visitors are not going to be the Rocky Mountaineer visitors that are paying $2,000 for a train ride. Our visitors are spending a little less money than that, so we'll certainly be advocating for something that works for our visitors and for our community.
The Great Trail, we are a stakeholder in that group. With the Rotary and all of the other organizations that are part of that. Absolutely, biking is a huge part of our community, and I think that if we had something like that, we would have a significant draw of people who would want to be going from Calgary, potentially staying here and going both ways if we connected on both sides of that. Like all things, there are some challenges with that, and I think that, you know, the potential dam in Glenbow Ranche is one thing that would significantly alter that project, because if there is a dam that goes in at that location, not only is it going to change the river where the bridge is supposed to be, but it will also flood a big portion of the park that is right next door to us, and a huge amenity that you know, people love to go to. So if the trail is a big thing for our community as a municipality and the Tourism Association, then we need to advocate on beside Glenbow Ranch to make sure that the dam maybe goes somewhere else upriver. Just on a side note.
Well, thank you for indulging me, and I'm always curious to hear what Cochrane Tourism has to say about those two projects in particularly, and then the other things we've talked about here today too. It seems like either or both would be such a big change to our community. I'd love to know what we can be doing as a council to enhance them, make them even better than they would be on their own if we did nothing. So appreciate the takes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I only have, I think, one question, and it's around resources. And Joanne, you and I have talked about this for, well, almost 6.5 years, I think. And COVID got in the way of some good ideas and some plans, but around the funding model, like currently, if you can remind us, you said there was 3 tiers, the province, the town, and your funding.
So our partnership program and our DMF. So those are the hotels who are voluntarily contributing. They'll add a DMF fund on top of their room rate and then voluntarily contribute it to our organization.
Destination Marketing
Fund. Yeah.
So as you say, and I'm highlighting this on purpose, it's a volunteer
Yes.
levy that they put on, say, a room charge that everyone that visits would pay, and then at the end of the year, the month, pay that to Cochrane Tourism.
Correct.
And so we've had conversations in the past about how we could change or shift that so that there would be more of a sustainable funding model available. Have you made any progress on that, or has that just been parked? Because I certainly haven't forgotten it, and I'd like to.
So we did work, so in December of 2022, we presented to council, and council did ask administration and economic development to actually create a plan for that. For most of 2023, I worked with Mike Corman on a plan. Unfortunately, that plan has not come to council yet, which sustainable funding in that realm is a big project because there's commitment from the municipality, there's things that need to be in place for that to actually become a reality. We have been working with our partners, and they also, our hotel partners, and they also recognize that Cochrane Tourism is at a really key point. So with the Ramada coming back on board. Of course, they were a tourism part of our destination marketing fund, so they have come back on board, and so they will be contributing to the DMF. There was a change in ownership at the crossing at Ghost River, and so they, being Castle Avery, they own Mount Engadine Lodge. They have also joined the Cochrane Destination Marketing Fund, so they will be contributing, and they see great value in what we're doing here, because it's not just Cochrane now, it's Cochrane and area with the tourism development zone. And so we have reached back out to the Days Inn and to start the conversation with them again, and we're also having a discussion with the campgrounds. So we've kind of just taken it upon ourselves to, because we have all these great opportunities, to reach out to those organizations to see if they will just join the Destination Marketing Fund until we have a point. Province is also talking about, is this going to be something, because now we have a sports and tourism ministry, and so this is the first time we have not been like the third thing on a ministry, which is really exciting for Calandra. And when Minister Scow was in Cochrane, we had a great meeting to share what's happening in not only the tourism sector, but in the sports world. So I think, yes, we will still continue to have those conversations with the municipality on what that might look like, but I think that there's lots of things that the municipality, you guys are dealing with, and so it's probably not in the forefront. And I'm sure we will, like I said, at some point in the future, perhaps have that conversation and bring it to council again.
Yeah, I guess the reason I bring it up is this feels like a good time for Cochrane Tourism with funding, but when you started 6.5 years ago, that wasn't the case. You were scrounging, and I think at that time you used the words, you were a full-time fundraiser.
Yep.
Versus tourism promoter. And so I think the pendulum has shifted slightly, but I'd hate for it to fall back into where it was, and that the momentum that you have created is lost. So I don't want to lose that conversation either.
Absolutely. I think, like I said, it still is very much an opportunity for the municipality to see this as moving it forward, but we don't have, like, the opportunity is right now with the province being here and with our collective with Destination Think. We need to do this right now, like this year. So Calandra's looked at some grant applications to help foster that. Just the opportunity for the town to see that Cochrane Tourism has done some amazing things over the last 6 years. So we hope that that will help you to see the benefit of continuing to support the organization.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point. I think it's a good one to end on, unless there's other questions. But the data that you've provided, it's easy to make decisions based on data. And this council's always fallen back on that. It's like, it's nice to have an idea and say, this is going to work and it's going to be great. And then we say, well, is this just a great idea, or is the data and the facts to back it up? So you've done a good job in showing us that. So I think if we said for another X amount of investment, we would see this amount of return. And I think we can go to taxpayers or anyone and defend those decisions. So thank you for all that work. And I don't know, council, if there's any other questions. I don't see any other lights on, but thank you, ladies, for the presentation tonight. Again, Joanne, all the best. I know you're not leaving the community, so
You'll see me around.
and you're doing a terrible job at retirement if you're
I know.
but all the best
I
to
did
you.
go play all day today.
Yeah.
With a great gray owl, so
Nice.
it was wonderful.
Well, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes care of delegations. We're into the business section. First up is our 2024 major capital projects update. You guys should hang around for this. This is, I said major capital projects.
I'll watch the video.
Ms. Dela Cruz?
Thank you, Mayor Junong. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The objective of my presentation tonight is to provide Council an update on 24 major capital projects that are under the Engineering and Asset Services section for Council's information and feedback. For the agenda for tonight, I'm going to go provide an update on major capital projects that we have completed last year. We have talked to Council about this, so I just want to go circle back to Council because we have completed a few of these projects. And then I'm going to go through major capital projects that we are going to advance or complete for this year, and then complete my presentation with a conclusion, and then we'll have time for a question and answer. So starting off with 2023 major capital projects completed. So first in the list is the station and Cochrane crossing. So the 7,700 square foot facility with a town plaza and CPR crossing was completed in October 2022. Since then, this facility has been extensively used by both administration and our public, including a very well-received open house that we did in March of last year. In 2023, fine-tuning for building systems plus installation of lighting and the monuments were completed. Free public Wi-Fi and bike lockers are now available across the entire site, and CCRF funded public art are targeted for installation later this year. Another major project we completed last year is the construction of the Protective Services Building. This facility provides accommodation for RCMP, victim services, and town's municipal enforcement staff. The facility officially opened to the public on June 19th, 2023, slightly ahead of schedule. A successful public grand opening was hosted on site on July 15th and was well received by the community. Work continues to fine-tune the facility systems and to close out remaining minor deficiency work. In September of last year, we completed the construction of the carport roof. The project was completed under budget despite ongoing supply chain delays, material and labor cost escalation, and contractor shortages. So last year as well, we completed 2 flood recovery and erosion control or FREC projects funded by the provincial government. The first FREC project is called the Bow River FREC project. This is meant to address the damage to the West Terrace Pond, which was damaged during the 2013 flood. This project was completed in early fall of last year and within the budget of $2.2 million. The Bow River FREC project included the upgrade and expansion of the storm pond, the engineered stormwater wetland, and the upgrade of the pedestrian bridge over the engineered wetland area. The second FREC project is along the Jumping Pound riverbank that was significantly damaged again in the 2013 flood. Work for this project has been completed last year and included a new trail alignment in the more western portion of the creek for improved protection from flooding and erosion, and the paving of this pathway was completed in May of last year. The project also included the construction of ripraps along the creek to slow down the flow and resist erosion. Additional planting and landscaping along the banks of the river to prevent future erosion were also completed in June of last year. The project also came under a budget of $1.1 million, and this was also funded by the provincial government. So another major project that we have been pursuing the last 2 years was the acquisition of new water licenses to support Cochrane's 25-year water supply strategy. I am very happy to share to Council tonight that after months and years of collaboration with Alberta Ministry of Environment and Protected Areas, we recently received authorization from AEPA for the transfer of 3,600 acre-foot per year of Girl Guides of Canada water license to Cochrane. This is a critical milestone in ensuring the sustainability of our community and our future growth for the next 25 years. And to fund the acquisition of the new water licenses, we actually implemented water license connection fees last year, starting September 1st. And I would have to say that the received this new way of funding on water licenses very well. So moving on to what's up for this year. So first off is the completion of Highway 1A and Center Avenue improvements. So as of 2023, we have completed the expansion of Highway 1A from 2 lanes to 4 lanes from Center Avenue to west of 6th Avenue. Storm pond grading was also completed, and the construction and concrete finishing of 4th Avenue wall was also completed. So for this year, minor construction work is going to happen. So Center Avenue planter is going to be completed or finished. The lower height retaining wall on the south side of Highway 1A is also going to be completed. Further enhancement, as in painting and installation of enhancement on the 4th Avenue wall is going to be done as well, plus additional tree planting and landscaping. Total budget is $27.45 million, and we expect to be within this particular budget at the end of this project. So some of these are the photos that we have taken of the project to date. So moving on, so this is another rendering of the artwork for the 4th Avenue wall. We have worked with our contractor in terms of determining the actual material in terms of the Cochrane branding and also the barnwood pattern. So we want to make sure that there is enough contrast there. And our corporate communications team is very much involved in terms of making sure that we are sticking to our branding standards. So the next one is Center Avenue Phase 3 and East End Storm Improvement. So we actually combined these two projects because of synergies that can happen because of the site locations for these two different projects. So completed task last year was Center Avenue widening from 2 to 4 lanes, replacement and upgrade of storm and water infrastructure, and burying of overhead utilities. So this is power and communication, sorry. And major tasks to be completed this year would be construction of concrete sidewalks, crosswalk ramps and curbs, and then the permanent paving and lining of the 4 lanes from William Street to First Street. And total budget is $5.4 million, and we're still tracking within that budget. So the next one is Highway 22 to Riverview Siphon. So this project is critical sewer infrastructure that will provide additional capacity to accommodate future growth west of Highway 22. To date, a significant portion of the underground pipeline has been installed either through horizontal directional drilling or open cut excavation. During the construction, however, the project team encountered the need to make changes to the project scope to further mitigate the risk and address the difference in pipe material from record drawings. To complete the project, administration will be requesting council for budget adjustment, and this will come at a future council meeting. So to conclude, last year was a particularly active year, and we were faced with a number of challenges to complete all these projects successfully. Administration and our project teams are very committed to learn from these challenges to further improve the way we plan, design, and deliver our capital projects. We continue to leverage on strong collaboration and building of intentional relationships with our contractors, regulators, and other industry partners to ensure we have good communication internally and externally to run successful projects. And lastly, administration has commissioned a review of the current state of our project management program to identify gaps and to develop a roadmap to benchmark and advance our project management standards, guidelines, and approaches. So the result from this assessment will inform a list of priorities for improvement, including the timing for implementation. I anticipate that some quick wins can be implemented this year to ensure we continue to improve our project management and in the spirit of continuous improvement. That's the end of my presentation, Council, and I will be very happy to answer some questions from you. Thank you.
There was a lot in there.
There's a lot in there.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Reid, shocker.
Thanks for that presentation. Thank you, it was great. Congratulations on all the projects that were accomplished in 2013 and for bringing those in on budget. And for the update on the 2024 capital projects. It identified in your report and in your conclusion, there were a number of mitigating challenges, I would say, with these projects for 2023. What learning and assurances can we provide the citizens of Cochrane that we have both the skills and the ability to be able to manage multiple projects and not only bring them in on budget, but just as importantly, to bring them in on time and with minimal disruption for those citizens whose lives we've dramatically affected over the last year. Specifically, can you add a little bit more color to your report about the project management consulting firm that you referenced in the written report and in your conclusion? And what learnings has the town gained that, that we will see manifested in this coming year?
Mm-hmm. Right. Thanks for that question, Councilor Reid. So one thing that I could really say is really one of the key learnings that we have is really planning the project very well, making sure that we understand some of the implications of several projects, let's say in a particular site like downtown. So it's one of the key learnings that we had with all the projects happening in downtown Cochrane last year. So part of that, the work that we'll be doing in the future is really doing more extensive project chartering, making sure that we understand what are the major deliverables, what are the expectations of different stakeholders, understanding the risk around these projects, and being able to find mitigation strategies for us to be able to reduce risk in terms of impact to public, impact to traffic, impact to businesses, or other major projects or other major risks that will help us to reduce risk to our budget and also our timing. So, we're still in the infancy of really advancing our project management practices, and we want to be able to improve that, and commissioning a third party for us to be able to assess. So we've done a lot of engagement internally in terms of what's working, what's not working. And our consultant actually has submitted a report to me about 2 weeks ago, and I have gone through it. But it's something that we will need to, communicate with internally with the rest of administration who's involved with project management, and we will identify a roadmap in terms of what can we start doing this year and then next year and the next 2 or 3 years, benchmarking that with what's the best management practices across the industry, and come up with a roadmap that is appropriate for the town given our size and our capacity and our resources, and then that will inform improvement opportunities for us to implement for the next 3 to 4 years. So, and that's something that, of course, we will include as part of our work plan and strategy. And if there's any additional resources that we need from council for us to be able to elevate or advance the way we're managing projects, that's something that we'll have to bring forward as part of our budget process.
So if I could, just a couple of questions. So you guys nailed it in terms of bringing in projects in on budget. And I guess for me, the other important qualities, it would be that they come in on time. Mm-hmm. Some of those projects did, some of those projects didn't, as we well know, again, for mitigating circumstances. And the other is, I think the majority of our citizens were very tolerant and patient during this last construction period. I don't know how much of that goodwill is going to continue if we continue as a community or as an administration town, as a town council, not to look to mitigate those issues. I think it's one thing to be able to have the software, the management program and project management consultant in place. But if it doesn't immediately have some effects, then I think the goodwill of our community is going to be shortchanged. Mm-hmm. The other thing I was thinking about is the mayor referenced, and I think we heard in some other communities where to bring projects in on time, they looked at a different schedule for the contractors, i.e. that some of them worked at night or on weekends. And again, there were parts of that project, just speaking for myself, that I recognized there were delays, and there were times when you thought they should be working and they weren't working, and times that they shouldn't be working but they were working. And I'm just wondering if there are any quick wins that you, like some low-hanging fruit that that the team has seen that we would look to implement. Mm-hmm.
So, Councilor, we part of our, let's say, our contract and agreement with our contractors, they have certain responsibilities that they need to follow and execute as part of their being hired as their contractor, right? So, from that perspective, we also just need to enforce those responsibilities that they have and make them accountable for the work that they're doing. So we have a responsibility as the representative of the town for us to be able to make sure that these projects are being managed as well. So one thing that we're really doing right now is really continuous communication with our contractor and really laying down their expectations, for example, around impact to businesses or to public and to traffic, and make sure that that's being communicated on a continuous basis, and they follow the responsibility in terms of informing, let's say, business is going to be impacted with some driveway closures and all that, and working with these businesses to ensure that they're aware and they have mitigation strategies to minimize the impact for with these businesses. Because I agree and understand the goodwill. We have to protect that, and we don't want to lose the trust and ability for us to be able to complete projects, because these are required for us to be able to provide infrastructure required for our community as we grow.
Yeah, I think you coined it right, trust. Yeah, I know in my own, the nonprofit that I run, we've dealt with contractors with, in one case, I would say, a multi-million-dollar project, and we actually put financial penalties in there if timelines weren't met, and they became increasingly more painful for the contractor. And I would suggest that might be something we would consider, because there's nothing like money that motivates a contractor. So,
for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good input. So that's something that we will also consider as part of our review for, as far as our project management guidelines and standards and procurement practices. So that's something that we will discuss internally, and we'll determine if that is something that we could look into, and if that's appropriate, we'll put that as part of our continuous improvement program.
Yeah, again, my comments aren't to take away from the successes that you had last year, but just to help us prepare for the future. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Reid.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Like this get me particularly excited. There was a lot going on there. I had a few thoughts as we went down the list. I didn't even realize, so I appreciate that we're doing these reports, Pinky. I didn't realize the holding pond upgrades and the jumping pound creek enhancements were just in this last year. Both seem like quality projects to me. The station in Cochrane Crossing, I just made a note here that in all the planning we did for that, I never realized how great I thought the outdoor space would turn out, and it really has come together really nicely. I think I'm excited for how that's going to shape our community in the years to come, the crossing and the outdoor space. A quick congratulations on the Girl Guides license, water transfer license thing just that happened in March here. I know it seems like it's a paper transfer of water licenses, but my goodness, it took a lot of effort and time, it seems like, and just glad to hear that it's done, and congratulations to the team on that. And also that you highlighted that the fees that will be paid for that, or at least the funding for that, will be acquired through our water connection fees, our user pay model. So just a tremendous thing to see come through. I just today, as I was driving through the Highway 1A downtown corridor area, I was thinking about how well that project seems to have turned out. I'm really pleased with, as we see the final results starting to take shape. I think it looks great and it functions well, and I'm excited about that. Center Avenue, to Councillor Reid's point he was just making, obviously had some painful moments last year under construction. I'm glad to hear that we can look forward to it being wrapped up and complete this year. I did have one question there. I believe that does set us up for 4 lanes at grade across the train tracks at some point in our future. Is that correct? Once that Center Ave is complete this year, it at least sets us up for the at-grade crossing expansion?
Councillor Wilson, yes, it does set us up for the evaluation of that. I know that's one of your key projects that you're interested in seeing move forward. Again, we were going to wait until the opening of the interchange as well as Center Ave and see what all the improvements before we actually proceeded with that project. But all of those projects coming to fruition will give us some really good data to look at.
Wonderful. And I understand that. Essentially, it means that on one side we have Grand Avenue that's set up to accept 4 lanes, and on the other side we have Center Avenue, of course, that's set up to accept 4 lanes. So it's just the middle part that we'd be deciding on how and when we do that, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just 2 more here. Highway 22 to Riverview Siphon. That's one that I'm not completely clear where we are there. I know, has the directional drilling now been successfully completed underneath the river, or I'm not quite sure where we are with that?
Yes, Councillor Wurzel, yeah, we were actually complete with the horizontal drilling, so there is some open cut excavation being done, so we're almost done, like about 85% of the pipeline installation has been completed, so.
Wonderful. Okay, that's that was kind of a buried lead where that to get past that part. Wonderful. Glad to hear it. I was just wondering, of course, what the order of magnitude of the budget adjustment we can expect is. Just I don't know if it's like if you can give me a percentage of product scope.
Councillor Wilson, we've been trying to bring that forward. We just, again, there's, as Ms. Delacruz said in her presentation, there's some material once they opened up the ground and the pipes were a different material than we anticipated. So again, we're working through those details and had hoped to bring it as part of the presentation this evening. But we just want to get that information clear because the message that we have shared and been very clear on is that we wanted to come to council once with a final number without coming back another time. So.
Okay, wonderful.
We'll have that for you shortly though.
Thank you. And then the final comment that got a question out of me was better budget management. And I think there was a little bit of that on what Councillor Reid was just talking about the project management end of capital projects. But as far as better budget management, what does that mean, Pinky? Or is that simply just the project management itself and making projects happen in a smoother fashion with the public? I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
Yeah, that's right. So Councilor Wilson, so ultimately what we want our projects to be is really to be on budget and on time with really good outcomes based on expectations from the community and stakeholders. So part of the work, so the assessment that we're doing is identifying ways and means for us to mitigate risk that can impact the budget. So understanding what are the risks and mitigating that, including that as part of our project implementation so that we can stay within our budget as much as possible, and incorporating any contingencies with unknown risks so that we don't have to go to council to ask for additional budget while we're actually completing the project.
Right. So it's more on the financial end of.
If I may, I think add a little bit to that as well. I think one of the things we've talked about as part of the process improvement that we've been looking at for capital projects is trying to stage the projects different in terms of how they come forward to council and their relative budget implications. What council has seen over some years is some really significant projects being passed in budget in the fall, and then we're trying to design, tender, and construct a project all in a single cycle. And that lends itself to a fairly fluid situation as design is completed. Now the project looks different than it did, when we were just at budget a few months prior. And so certainly for projects of a certain level of significance, what council would likely see is that there would be a design phase of the project, a tendering phase of the project, and a construction phase of the project, which would give us better, clearer budget implications as we move through the project, rather than us using good methodology, trying our best to capture what we think the costs of those are, and then ending up in some cases coming back to council and saying, hey, some of our, as we just said, some of our, we expected this material, we found this material that has this implication in the budget. Those are still going to happen occasionally, but we think they can be minimized by staging the pre-work in the project a little bit differently.
Excellent, thank you. I think in essence, what the list that we just saw highlights to me is that more often than not, in fact, most of the time here, it seems that there's been a lot of quality projects delivered in this community. I'm really happy with how a lot of that is coming together, and thank you for your part in that, Pinky, which is a large part, and great list, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wilson. Appreciate that.
Councillor Flowers?
I too wanted to say congratulations on completing so many huge projects. There was a lot going on. In particular, the water licenses. We've been talking about them for a few years and always knew there was hope, but to have it complete and it's just very comforting to know that it is complete and it was successful. So thank you for that. My only question was around the, what I think Councillor Reid actually asked it. Where did my notes go? The group that you're accessing to do the projects, project management consulting firm. That's what it was. And so is that an outside group that we're hiring to do some of the work or to help organize?
Yes, Councilor Flowers. We actually commissioned a consulting firm that is very known to sort of like guide municipalities in terms of how to improve their project management guidelines and standards and practices. So they're well known in the industry, and we thought it's really good for us to be able to hire somebody external so that they can provide us some benchmarking information and provide us some guidance as well in terms of what good templates could we use, what guidelines and what practices that we could utilize that will be appropriate for Cochrane.
Great. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilor Flowers.
Okay, last but not least, I want to build on what both my colleagues have been saying, Councillor Reid and Wilson, about improved project management. And I'm not going to repeat everything. I think what you both of you guys asked was great, and I appreciate the answers, especially around the phasing that Mr. Derricott mentioned. I really like that approach. It's really an awkward, I mean, no one wants to be in the position of asking for an increased budget after everything's been set. I think what I'm hearing is acknowledgement of some mistakes or some pressures and barriers that we've had as an organization in delivering these big projects. And notwithstanding, there's been a lot of them that have been delivered on time and under budget. But the ones that haven't, so I'm glad to hear that we're making strides and focusing on how to improve that process. The one thing, I guess, that I would ask that hasn't been asked is around as-built drawings. What are we setting our future selves up for that we've basically inherited from our past, where we're finding things that we should know what they are in the ground? Can you maybe see, is that part of the growth that we're experiencing as well?
That's right, Mayor Junong, that's actually a very good question. So that's something that we are also going to be exploring as part of improving our project management. To tell you frankly, I don't really have a good understanding in terms of the actual state of our record drawings and all that, but I've encountered some issues as we go through some of these projects. So there's a gap there. So that's something that we need to understand. What is the gap right now as far as our record drawings, and what do we need to do to be able to catch up in terms of making sure that we have good record drawings, because they're really very crucial in terms of planning and delivery. So that's part of the work that we'll be doing as part of our project management improvement.
Yeah, and I think for those at home that don't know what we're talking about, it's like, well, how would you not know what kind of pipe is in the ground? Well, it was buried 50 70 years ago.
That's right.
And maybe there wasn't a record, or everybody thought at that time, we'll write it in the shop wall and they'll find it eventually when they, but I mean, I'm being trite about it, but Mr. Hyman,
No, I think I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that's one of the challenges that we've encountered on a lot of these projects, especially when we go into our older neighborhoods, is once we get into the ground, we're finding things aren't exactly where we thought they were, the materials are different. So I think it emphasizes Ms. Dela Cruz's and her expertise in asset management, the efforts as we were going through strategic planning, where council really focused on that, and a fiscal framework for us to effectively manage the resources that we have. Again, we can't go back to when those drawings were first created, but certainly moving forward, and what are the steps that we take to mitigate any of the impacts that we have on these projects.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I just wanted to highlight for people that, it seems like a no-brainer that we would know what we have in the ground or what we built, but we're even experiencing it at the rec center with the recent addition of the pool and splash park, et cetera. There's drawings, but then what was actually built isn't exactly what's there until you find a problem and have to excavate or expose something. So it's not just 50 years ago, that was a 2017 or 16 build. So
That's right, yes.
I hope that we're leaving a legacy of clear drawings of how we've left things
That's right, yes.
into the future. So
And also, Mayor Jun, I also want to go add, so not just from an asset management perspective, but one thing that we also need to review and improve would be our business process, right? In terms of when do we make sure to capture all those as-built drawings, and what systems do we use, how do we store that, how do we file all those records? So all those things will be part of our business continuous improvement that I'm anticipating we should be implementing soon as well.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hyman, do you have another comment? Sorry.
Yeah, the only comment I was also going to share is I appreciate all of the feedback for us. Again, we're trying to improve our processes as we move forward. I think one of the things that You'll hear in the next presentation as we have some, our capital projects open house coming up. So again, sharing information with the community is one of the most important things. So we've got one on April 11th and April 13th. We did our first last year. I think taking those steps are really important. And then, you know, at the conclusion of some of these projects, I think we need to take the time to reflect on what were some of the project successes and some of the impacts to community. I would like to, you know, and again, council is well aware of this, but the Glen Hill residents with the siphon project had significant impacts. We have to have systems internally that are effective to respond when they call in. In the most recent situation, we did not. So certainly a number of residents had to encounter a number of evenings where they shouldn't have had the noise that they encountered. So it's those learnings that I think are important. Our group's been focused on, and we're going to implement the systems to effectively address those moving forward. So.
Good to hear. And lastly, I wanted to bring this up last on purpose because you breezed through this water licensing thing, just like you were clicking through all the projects and, oh yeah, and the water licensing. And a couple of colleagues have mentioned it tonight, but I just wanted to highlight it again. When Councillor Wilson, you said it's merely a piece of paper, and I think that's how it will be remembered. But for us and for this organization and this community, for as long as I can remember, the last at least decade, we've been grappling with water license issues. So could you maybe just highlight the approach that was taken? And we don't have to go through all the details of the project, but in a Reader's Digest version of what exactly we accomplished and what were the savings in the innovative approach that was taken?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's going to be my pleasure. So, Mayor Junong, what we were actually trying to implement is this very innovative and more cost-effective way for us to be able to acquire our license requirements for the next 25 years. So the approach that we took is basically combining two different kinds of licenses. So there is the consumptive licenses. These are the ones that are acquired by most municipalities, and they're very expensive and very hard to find. Sometimes the volumes of these licenses are very small that it's hard for us to be able to accumulate our required consumptive license for the next 25 years. So what we actually propose to Alberta Environment is for us to be able to combine consumptive licenses and non-consumptive licenses. Non-consumptive licenses are recreational licenses, and they're usually like flow-through, right? So, and we also propose that instead of acquiring 100% consumptive licenses, what we propose is that only 20% of our requirement for the next 25 years would be consumptive licenses, and 80% would be non-consumptive licenses. So the linchpin of the strategy will be two things, right? One is Alberta Environment approving our approach, and the second thing is us being able to obtain a non-consumptive license. And this is where the Girl Guides license came in. So the Girl Guides license is enough for us to be able to accommodate or acquire 80% of our water license requirements for the next 25 years. So through collaboration and a lot of documentations, a lot of water modeling to convince Alberta Environment that this is going to go work, it's not going to go harm the river and aquatic life. We were able to collaboratively work on this approach, and yeah, after many months and after many years of collaborative work with Alberta Environment and our partners and our project team, we were able to actually obtain this approval from Alberta Environment for us to acquire the Girl Guides license. So there's a lot of cost savings because, as I said, consumptive licenses are very hard to find and very expensive. But with this approach, we were able to come out with a cost-effective solution, significant cost savings. I'm quite hesitant to actually say right now how much because we're still negotiating with other license holders, and we want to protect the interests of the town, but it's very significant, and it will allow us to be able to acquire and be able to accommodate the growth for the next 25 years for the town.
I think it would be safe to say millions of dollars.
Yes, millions and millions of dollars.
So thank you for that. And I think the win here too is that what Councillor Wilson also pointed out was that in our philosophy of growth paying for growth with the water hookup fee, I mean, this is water license that current Cochrane residents, you know, it's nice to have that buffer, but it's not water license that currently we need. It's future Cochrane residents, and the future Cochrane residents are paying for that through the water license, the hookup fee.
That's right, yes, correct. That's right, Mayor
Okay,
Chairman. Okay.
perfect. And thank you for your update, and I don't see any other questions. Appreciate the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Joe.
Now we have historic Ranche and Glenbow pathway improvements. Ms. DeLorme.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. All right, so I'm here this evening to provide an update on the historic Ranche and Glenbow Park Pathway and Bridge projects. These projects offer or foster an age-friendly environment and enrich residents' experiences in these cherished spaces by mitigating hazards such as water pooling, icy conditions, and erosion. I'll now share a video designed to enhance civic literacy and is part of our communication strategy on these projects. Hopefully it's gonna work.
Our pathways are the heart of our community, connecting our neighborhoods and bringing people together to enjoy the outdoors. This year, Cochrane will be improving connections through the historic Ranche and Glenbow Park, making it easier than ever to explore our scenic trails and discover Cochrane's natural beauty. As part of these upgrades, we're also replacing 4 pedestrian bridges in Glenbow. Over time, the pathway has shown signs of wear and tear, making it difficult for everyone to use. This year, we will be paving these pathways, adding nearly 4 kilometers of asphalt to improve accessibility and support year-round use. We've taken great care to minimize the impact of this new 3-meter-wide pathway on the area's natural habitats by conducting extensive environmental assessments. By investing in our pathways, we're fostering inclusivity, ensuring people of all ages and abilities can enjoy our natural spaces while preserving their beauty for generations to come. To learn more about this project, visit cochrane.ca/pathway improvement.
Excellent report.
I know, amazing, right? So the 2012 Bicycle Network Plan and the 2017 Connecting Cochrane Plan have both recognized significance of the historical Ranche and the Glenbow pathway as a crucial link to the community, particularly for residents of Sunset, Cochrane's largest neighborhood. This pathway is a vital corridor providing convenient access for residents to commute actively from Sunset and Glenbow to the Bow River and the downtown areas. Data collected by Bike Cochrane in 2023 suggests approximately 80,000 individuals utilize the historic Ranche pathway. We know that a portion of these individuals would also be utilizing the Glenbow Park and the pathway system there because it is a school active transportation corridor, highlighting its popularity and importance to the community. While these are separate projects, the bridge upgrades in the Glenbow Park and the paving project are being presented together due to their interconnected impact on the park. The implementation of these projects will begin in July 2024 and is planned in 4 phases to minimize disruption to pathway users, wildlife, and the environment. Phase 1A is the removal of the bridges and installation of the new bridges. Phase 1B is Glenbow Pathway North. Phase 2 is Glenbow South. And Phase 3 is paving the historic Ranche pathway and replacing the culvert. So Phase 1A is indicated here in the pink in the map, and it is the bridge life cycling project. It involves removing old wooden bridges and installing new steel bridges. A 25% deposit has been made for the required materials. Detailed planning is underway to minimize the environmental impact on park streams with the project approval obtained through the Public Lands Act. Environmental site assessments have been conducted, including fish habitat and vegetation surveys. Pre-consultation assessments have been completed with no Indigenous consultation required. Applications for the Historical Resources Impact Assessment and water course crossings have been submitted with confirmation that no specific requirements exist within Glenbow Park. Additionally, a navigable waters application has been submitted. Here on the map, you'll see Phase 1B, and that's Glenbow North, and that's pink. And Phase 2 includes Glenbow South, that's the yellow. The historic Ranche and Glenbow Pathway paving project is advancing with attention to community, historical, and environmental factors. This includes a completed Indigenous consultation, acquisition of a wildlife permit, a snake hibernaculum survey, comprehensive environmental studies. The planned pathway will be 3 meters wide, with ongoing efforts to minimize impacts on park trees to maintain a natural ambiance for users. A historical resources impact assessment application has been submitted to Alberta Culture. It has been determined that Glenbow Park is not required. However, there is a requirement in the historic Ranche. So the green line here shows phase 3, which is the historic Ranche, and it has been left as the last phase to ensure minimal disruption to the wildlife, including the park's resident owl. This phase includes replacing the culvert in the historic Ranche and paving the current pathway. Once the ground thaws, the historical resources impact assessment must be completed before construction can begin. This process entails archaeologists going along the pathway and digging shovel depth holes to ensure that we're not paving over any archaeological artifacts. Throughout all of the phases of construction, we are following stringent environmental mitigation measures, and we will be including an ongoing snake hibernaculum assessments, performing bird sweeps to the safeguard of nesting birds, implementing erosion and sediment control measures to prevent soil and harmful substances from entering water bodies, preparing spill response and emergency plans, and ensuring the restoration of disturbed or removed vegetation. The historical Ranche and Glenbow Pathway project, initiated in April 2023 and scheduled for completion around October 2024, began with environmental site assessments in April and May of 2023 and a snake hibernaculum survey in September. It progresses through milestones such as construction tender awarded in November 2023 and obtaining various permits and consultations, including Indigenous consultation, historical resources application, and compliance with Navigable Waters Act. Phase construction is planned from July to October 2024, and due to the project complexities and timeline adjustments, an additional financial request will be presented on April 22nd to accommodate increased budget needs, including compliance with the Historical Resources Act and inflationary factors. To give you a better understanding of the construction process, the bridge removal is 17 days. The bridge installation in Glenbow North paving is 84 days. The Glenbow South pathway prep is 8 days. The Cochrane Ranche pathway prep is 8 days. And the paving of the entire project, once the bridge work is complete, is 8 days. The project will affect residents due to the closure of Glenbow Park and the historical Ranche pathway during construction. Pedestrian detour routes marked by the blue line on the map will be established while Glenbow Park is closed. Efforts will be made to open park sections earlier if it's feasible and safe. There won't be any road closures, but the construction activities may result in general noise and disruptions in the vicinity. So over the past year, administration has actively engaged with approximately 200 residents, listening to their feedback and addressing their questions and concerns regarding the project to upgrade pathways in Glenbow Park and the historic Ranche. Through this ongoing dialogue, common themes have emerged, providing valuable insights that have been carefully considered by the team. One consistent message residents convey is the cherished status of the Glenbow Park and historic Ranche. In response, adjustments like changing the width of the pathway from 4 meters to 3 meters have made the project based on community feedback. Administration remains dedicated to maintaining transparency and keeping the FAQ section of the website regularly updated to address any inquiries as they may arise. So a comprehensive engagement strategy has been crafted to ensure active community involvement and widespread project awareness. This strategy entails participating in capital project open houses, the spring trade show, the Give a Little Love event, and before construction, a media release and pathway signage will be implemented. Continuous updates will be communicated through diverse channels, including municipal matters, digital signage, social media platforms, and Cochrane's website. It is noteworthy that on March 26th, I brought a similar presentation forward to the Parks and Rec Committee, and there was unanimous endorsement for this entire project. So in the capital projects from 2023 and 2024, the budgets allocated are 1.1 million designated from reserves to finance the bridge project, and 660,000 was approved from reserves for the paving project. With the supplementary support from the Active Transportation Fund, the combined approved project total is $2,430,400. The Active Transportation Fund grant total is $770,400, stipulating that these funds are solely designated for the paving project, wayfinding, and pavement markers. In 2025, $100,400 of the grant funds will be assigned to installing wayfinding signs and pavement markers across Cochrane's active transportation network. It's worth noting that the Active Transportation Fund was interpreted to cover 60% of the project cost. However, the maximum available is $770,400. As a result of the project's intricate demands, adjustments to timelines have become necessary, resulting in various impacts. Consequently, on April 22nd, administration will present a financial request for an additional $619,210.75 to accommodate the expanded budget, necessitated by modifications to project timelines, adherence to the Historical Resources Act, and inflationary factors. These additional funds will be requested to be drawn from the Municipal Infrastructure Reserve. Elevating Cochrane's active transportation network directly resonates with Council's strategic objectives. Nurturing a dynamic and united community fabric through the enhancement of pedestrian bridges and the paving of the pathways. This initiative not only fosters resident well-being, but also enriches the town's distinct character, in line with the strategic priority of preserving parks and open spaces while cultivating vibrancy. Furthermore, these enhancements bolster age-friendly strategies, ensuring that outdoor spaces remain safe and accessible for generations and all residents. These projects promote connectivity throughout Cochrane, seamlessly linking vital areas and cultivating a connected community. Additionally, the emphasis on sustainability and environmental stewardship in infrastructure development underscores a dedication to prudent resource management, thereby echoing Council's commitment to promoting environmental stewardship. And thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Councillor Reid.
Michelle, thanks for the presentation. I'm really excited about this project, as I suspect my colleagues are in council. What I'm trying to get my head around is the financial numbers then. So the $770,000, $400,000 from the ATF grant, originally, was that just to cover the assessment, or did you say that that was just specifically for pavement or certain things like pavement?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Reid, the grant fund was $770,400, and that includes the paving, wayfinding, and then pavement markers. So the application for the granting was for a full active transportation. So pavement markers are like painting your bike lanes. Wayfinding is different signage throughout the network in Cochrane, which is why we're saving $100,000 of it to go forward in 2025 to ensure that we can complete that portion of the grant requirement.
So I guess where my question is going to is the $619,210.75. Was that recognized after the fact, or was there always assumed that there's going to be additional costs, but we just didn't know how much it was?
No, that's a great question. So what has happened is that there were robust requirements. Indigenous consultation took longer than anticipated. Historical Resources Act was a requirement that, knowing that we can't actually do any construction until those two components are actually completed, pushed our timeline quite far into the year. Initially, we were planning and we had budgeted based on being able to do the construction when the ground is frozen. So what the construction timeline being pushed has actually implemented a requirement for things like different tools to come in so that we're not ruining the park. The other part of it is inflationary factors. I actually have the data here. There's in 2022, when the project was priced out, it was $125 per linear meter for a 3-meter asphalt pathway. But in 2024, the price is actually $180 per linear meter. So there's a couple of different factors of why we're needing to come back and ask for this additional money.
So this kind of segues back to our last discussion and Mr. Durcott's comment about how we should do phasing in terms of being able to appropriately deal with these projects. The other question I had was, and again, I'm really excited about this project, but what is the life expectancy of the pavement, the bridges? Like, when will a future town council have to come back and look to mitigate or evergreen some of this project?
That's a really good question. I don't actually have the life expectancy, but the steel bridges are going to last a lot longer than the wood bridges have, and they are original bridges that were installed in the park. Paving tends to last a lot longer. I don't know if...
Yeah, Councillor Reid, I think with the steel bridges, I was involved with the procurement, putting the deposit down for the 25%. I think we went ahead and did that in advance of coming to council because we had that money, but we did save because of the increase in steel price, so we did that last fall. But to answer your question, I don't have an exact number, but I think that it will be a very distant council that has to address the replacement. These bridges they can have all our heavy equipment go across them. If you've seen the existing bridges, they're not in very great shape. Michelle and myself, a number of us went out to actually walk the entire area. I'm excited about this project. I think it gives a lot of lasting value for the community and meets a lot of council's key objectives.
So I appreciate that. I won't be around when the bridges need to be replaced, but I'm just curious. I know in the area that I live in where there's asphalt, that the close proximity of the trees and their rooting has caused bumps, and so it would seem to me that you would want to have some, I'm not sure what the proper term is, Mike, but you want to have some funds to be able to do repairs as you recognize that this is an asset that you're going to have to eventually put some money towards. What am I looking for?
Yeah, that's asset management and certainly something that we would be looking at. But again, for this project, moving it forward and again, Mr. Lorm's presentation, and we did this very intentionally to introduce it to council this evening, have the public engagement coming up on the 13th or the 11th and the 13th, and then come back to council on the 22nd. So again, if there's any additional questions, we're happy to get any information that you need.
Yeah, I think you just need to show the video and leave it at that. Great, thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you just mentioned, Mr. Hyman, about that this will come back to council, and obviously I think there's going to be some follow-up questions too. Where my mind's going to, I'm also excited about this project. I see the utility, of course. Since we first talked about it, and I'm trying to remember when it first came up with our ATF, Active Transportation Fund granting. I know there was some friction from user groups in the community, even amongst council. There were some concerns. I definitely took a moment myself to meet with some of the critical user groups. Went out and actually walked the pathway that I know so well, the Glenbow portion there, where I've been walking my entire life. I remember we used to do Glenbow school turkey trots up and down that when I was somewhere in the 90s, and it hasn't changed since then. It's the same path that it's been way back then, and so as I was walking up and down the pathway with the a lot of the critical user groups and the people that are really concerned, a few of the things we heard were some have been addressed. So the 4-meter wide pathway originally, I believe, has been shrunk to 3 meters. That saves a bunch of trees being removed. Of course, that sounds like a great solution. Some of the chemical runoffs from the paving seem to be addressed. Slipperiness and cold temperatures, that seems to be addressed. The part that I think we still struggle with, and it's only on one tiny little portion of this pathway, and it's somewhere just to the, what would it be, the east of the Glen Hill neighborhood, so right adjacent to the Big Hill Creek, is the undulations, the tight twists and turns that are right next to the creek. And there's a lot of concerns about how you could even pave something with that sort of, it just seems like a portion that'd be difficult to pave. Have we addressed that in particular? Or is that just a simple pave it as it is? Does the path change from where it currently lies? Those are the kind of questions I'd have for that one tiny little portion of what we're talking about.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilson. So yes, that area will be paved. The contractor has gone through there and checked everything. We will be able to maintain some of the curvature. However, parts of that pathway are down to 1.5 meters, so that will be expanded to 3 meters. So I think it's important to note that some of the trees will be coming out, but the Parks Department in 2025 are going to be replacing all of the trees in that park for a 1-to-1 ratio. So anything that has to come out, they are going to be picking, a lot of the older trees are in poor condition. So the parks team has already gone out and checked to see which trees need to be removed specifically in that area. And every tree will be replaced 1-to-1. So we can pave it. It will remain kind of curvy, and we will be able to replace the trees.
Okay. Okay,
Councillor
fantastic.
Wilson, there was also an understanding from the project team that that was the most sensitive area from the input that we received throughout this. So again, there is attention, as Mr. Lorme has indicated, to that area, and we believe that we can proceed with the 3-meter trail in that area.
Okay, thank you for that. Build some level of confidence at least. I also had questions on the financial end when we're talking about, obviously there's a big increase asked going on. I understand why we need to move forward with this, because we need to utilize our ATF funding, and it's beyond a point of being, the need is obvious when you walk that path, just how the degradation that's gone on. I had a question about, so we were just talking about $125 per linear meter going to heading to $180 per linear meter in a year and a half. Like, that's just an inflationary amount you gave us. That's stunning.
Yeah, that's the inflationary amount from April 2022 when the project was initially proposed and budgeted out to today's time.
So if I was to guess my next question, then it's more the inflationary pressures that have caused this increase than compliance with Historic Resources Act, which is also a question mark in my mind about what the heck that is. Maybe we could touch on that too.
I'm happy to. So it is a bit of inflationary, but like I said, adjusting the actual time frame of the project itself has impacted the fact that we can't be having heavy equipment on frozen ground versus ground that's not frozen. So things like rig matting would be brought in to ensure that there's minimal disruption on the vegetation in the park. So that all adds additional costs. And due to the Historical Resources Act, we've actually also had to hold off on the construction, so that changed inflationary factors. The Historical Resources Act, through Alberta Culture, Cochrane actually has quite a few areas where we're required to submit an application, and there's the Glenbow Park and Historic Ranche are part of those areas within Cochrane that we have to submit an application before any sort of construction can happen. And then Alberta Culture has a way to determine if further archaeologists need to come in and understand if there's any historical artifacts in the area before construction happens. The Historic Ranche has actually had a few of these applications happen. When the Manavision went in, we had to do that. When the initial pathway went in, we had to do it. So any sort of construction in the Historic Ranche essentially meets this requirement, but that was unknown at the time. So the application went in, and then we found out a few months later. It took 3 months to actually get the confirmation that it was a requirement.
Okay, thank you. Could you remind me how, what role did council play in holding this up? Did we hold this project up, or is this the timeline that we always had right from the, I'm unclear on if we did during the budget cycle hold this up or not. And then obviously there's inflationary costs associated with it. That's why I'm asking that question.
Thank you. No, Councilor Wilson, there was extensive discussion at budget time. Council did approve for it to go into the budget and continue to move forward with the commitment to come back and make this report as the project went forward. So you're off the hook for.
We're off the hook on the timeline portion of this.
On the
Okay,
timeline
great.
portion.
Okay. All right. All right, I think that exhausts my questions. Thank you. My only other thing here was on snake hibernaculum. That's so wild to me. I was thinking of asking a question. We'll just leave that alone. And thank you for that.
Yes, well, I can elaborate. You actually need a snake shoer.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so it's part of the project.
Okay.
I'm not being the snake shoer.
Thank you for the report. Look forward to our regular council discussion.
Yeah, I'll leave that one alone too, other than to say, I appreciated the update tonight. I mean, I'm disappointed to see that there's an increase in budget ask, but that was well covered, and I think the reasoning behind it was explained well. I thought that video was excellent. And I would add that as representative on the Parks and Rec Committee, representing the Rec Center, that, as you mentioned in your report, the committee also found that video exceptional. And when there was a robust discussion about the project, and as you mentioned, unanimous support to move ahead, including the increase in funding was also mentioned during that committee meeting. So, and that's a broad cross section of our community that sits on that committee now, and there's a lot more new members as well. So I was interested to hear their commentary on it, and it was enlightening to hear the support for this project. The couple of points that I wanted to make were around signage, and I see in the report that, and you mentioned signage before the project starts and during, so that people, I think that's an excellent way for someone to stumble along and see what's happening. I think we do that well with our development permit and those orange signs. So it'd be similar to one of those informative signs on the project itself.
Yeah, there will be multiple signs, and then we're also looking at creating signage for the construction fencing, just to give pathway users the full story.
QR code, link to the video.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. And then the last point I would make, and it's around the snake hibernaculum. I think some of the pushback we were getting from residents in the area were around the environmental sensitivities. And I think you've done an excellent job of outlining the painstaking task of assessing and also mitigating all of those. And I won't go through the list, but it's exhaustive. And I'm happy to hear that, and I'm not surprised either, but hopefully that will speak to some of the concerns that some residents had along that area. So Beloved Creek, Beloved Pathway, and this project will marry those two and allow us to really enjoy that area for years to come. Councillor Reid. Well past Councillor Reid's, I'll just say time on council. Yeah. But thank you for the presentation. Look forward to this coming back to our future council meeting.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, last item on the agenda tonight, 5C, Bylaw 17, 2024. Ms. Knight, making your way to the podium for council's procedural bylaw.
I can't wait to see the video on this one, Miss Knight.
I have requested to go first on every agenda, so I don't have to follow Shane or Ms. Delorme or Ms. Dela Cruz. They have not afforded me that luxury tonight, so I will wrap this up for you this evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. In your agenda package this evening is the initial draft of the new procedural bylaw that we are hoping to receive your comments ahead of bringing it forward for first reading. The procedural bylaw is the key tool used by council to ensure effective and efficient meetings. Council provided direction last fall to administration that your primary focus was on creating a clear, concise bylaw that increased efficiency and provided flexibility. And with that focus in mind, we drafted the procedural bylaw before you. Administration's intent was to ensure that it was easy to read, was a clear and accurate reflection of processes that have been in use by this council, and aligned with your guiding document, the Municipal Government Act. We have worked to ensure clear language has been utilized and removed any sections that were seemingly misaligned with the MGA. Redundant motions were removed and clarity introduced specifically surrounding the Committee of the Whole meetings and external committee appointments, while also confirming that both of our quasi-judicial boards and our Cochrane Library Board are governed by separate legislation, despite having their members appointed by council. We included the ability to add task forces and ad hoc committees by resolution, as well as finally including our external committee listing that council has appointed members to annually, but was not part of our previous bylaw. Our Committee of the Whole process is mapped out with greater clarity and appoints the Deputy Mayor to chair these meetings and also confirms process when the Deputy Mayor is unavailable, as she is this evening. We have streamlined the motions within the bylaw down from 11 to 6, understanding that some were included in the previous bylaw were more specific to provincial process and not municipal, and as such had not been utilized since the original bylaw was adopted. The order of business for our regular council meetings in Schedule A has also been shortened to eliminate the bylaw section. In doing this, legislative services will be able to organize the business coming before council with the hope or to lessen or eliminate the need to move items around prior to adoption of the agenda. As council is aware, at times items are directly linked but in separate sections of the agenda. There is no legislative rationale for having bylaws separated into their own section, and so this simple change should have a positive impact on the flow of presentations. We have removed any reference to specific times and dates of council or Committee of the Whole meetings, as those dates and times will now be set annually at the organizational meeting, which will give council greater flexibility. Should there be a desire to adjust meeting times, it would now be able to be completed by resolution. An invited presenter section has also been added that was not in the previous bylaw. This section is specific to guests administration is looking to have come forward, similar to the university district presentation, who may not qualify as a delegation but have important information administration feels should be shared with council. We've worked to provide greater clarity as well as a tracking sheet request form for notice of motions. And finally, we've extended our timelines for public hearing submissions and notice of motions to ensure a thorough review agendas are completed ahead of being provided to council and posted on the website for residents to review. Going from 7 to 14 days will increase the quality of the reporting and information shared with council. Also, one last item that is not within the draft before you, as I was waiting for legal opinion on the specific wording, is what is now on the screen as soon as I put it up here. This is specific to the cancellation of meetings. So this wording highlighted in yellow here on the screen would provide the mayor the ability to cancel a meeting should the need arise with specific parameters. This has been something that has been done in the past, but we recognize the need for it to be formally included in the procedural bylaw. Section 6.4A on the screen delegates the ability for the mayor to cancel regular meetings of council if there are no time-sensitive items required to come forward, with certain provisions that meetings would need to be canceled more than 3 business days prior to the meeting that is scheduled, and that appropriate notice be provided to both the members of council and the public. We have included a provision that would have council have the authority to remove this temporarily from the mayor's ability by resolution as well, so that council can restrict the mayor from canceling meetings should they prefer to do so. And as well, we've included the section for a state of local emergency that the mayor then has the authority to cancel that on his own. So that is not, this section on the screen is not part of the bylaw that was included in your package, but it is something, should council provide direction that you would like this section included when it comes for first reading, it will be included in the bylaw prior to that agenda coming forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions council might have about the procedural bylaw in your package.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. Councillor Reid.
Surprise. Just speaking to this addition, I'm not sure what the value is of point B. Like, would there really be a need for that, or is that just because, or was that legal advice?
I reached out to our lawyer because we have had instances in the past year where items are sometimes fluid in the planning world, and where we thought we had a full agenda, all of a sudden we had a singular item that wasn't time sensitive in nature. And we did, based on our interpretation of the MGA, had the mayor cancel the meeting based on that advice. We did receive some concerns expressed, and so we did reach out to our lawyers to determine whether that was something we could be putting in this procedural bylaw that would allow the mayor that authority in certain instances. She has advised us there's many municipalities that are struggling with this because the MGA is rather vague in this space. Normally where we have instances where there are lacking items, we're aware of that as we're coming up, and we try to include that into the council meeting itself, the one before that, so that council can pass a resolution. But there has been one or two instances where that happens at a very late stage of the agenda planning process, and we are not able to get in front of council for that resolution. So without wording such as this in there, the mayor would not be able to cancel a meeting, and we would be calling either a special meeting to cancel it, or we would be having a meeting with a singular item.
And I think if I may add, I think to your question on point B, I think that is just to present company excluded, of course, to prevent a mayor from inappropriately using that authority. So council then just acts as a check to the potential misuse of that item. Of course, we don't anticipate that happening, but we just want to make it clear that ultimately council does have that discretion as to whether or not they'll allow the mayor to exercise that power.
So just to play devil's advocate, that in terms of if the council were to exercise B, what would happen where a meeting needed to be canceled? It couldn't be canceled because? It couldn't
be canceled in that instance. If council had provided a resolution to temporarily suspend for anywhere up to a year, it could be 6 months, council could determine the timing on that, but then a meeting would not be allowed to be canceled. What this does is essentially, the MGA allows for council to delegate their authority in specific instances by bylaw. So the procedural bylaw in its current state with the wording on the screen would then delegate that ability to cancel meetings directly to the mayor. So that B section is to allow council to have sort of a fallback position, say a new council comes in with a mayor that likes to cancel all the meetings. Well, then council can come in and withdraw that delegation to the mayor.
Okay, I get that. My question is, if council were to exercise B, what would happen in a circumstance where administration said, hey, there's only one item on the agenda, and would have wanted to exercise A, but now can't do that, right? So the meeting would have
Correct.
to continue?
A meeting would either continue or we would call a special meeting to cancel the next meeting.
Okay, okay.
Which is exactly the circumstance we're trying to give council the flexibility, is to allow for those rare circumstances where a meeting it may be prudent to cancel it, that the mayor has the ability to do that. In most circumstances, as Ms. Knight mentioned, we would try to get in front of council and have council as a whole make those decisions. So we're talking about a pretty narrow set of circumstances here, and one that we don't anticipate being used at a high frequency, but it will come in handy in the odd circumstance that it occurs. Yeah.
So my overall questions are, like, I'm not sure if this is a love of labor or labor of love, but you've done an excellent job given the kind of comments that we've heard, particularly in the last couple of years, not necessarily the first term that we've had, but the last couple of years, and I really appreciate it. The one question, and so I wanted to thank you for that. The one question I had was I think it's in the new section, well, it's in the old, is it a new section? 4.5, conduct. So, where does the situation come in where there's a conflict of interest? Is that in a separate section?
There is a pecuniary interest section.
What section is that?
Let me just find that for you.
4.12.
4.12? And the new one?
Yes.
Just give me one moment, Councilor Wilson.
It's on
It's
page
under 4.12.
Okay.
Not 4.12, 4.12.
A. Given the kind of issues that we've had to deal with over the last little while, do you think that this is strong enough?
It references the pecuniary interest specific to the act. So in some of these spaces where we are referring back to the act, we don't necessarily do a carbon copy of what's in the act and put it into the bylaw.
Right.
So that when the act gets updated, the reference to that act also updates with it. So we haven't done that in this section. We haven't done that in the special meeting section. We've just referred to the act because we cannot deviate from what the MGA tells us in regards to the pecuniary interest section.
So, but
I
in terms
think-
of our own bylaws, couldn't they be stronger than the MGA? Like than the act?
I think if I may, sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Reid, I would just add as well that I think there's the purpose of dealing with pecuniary interest as it relates directly to participation in a council meeting, and I think that that's the attempt to deal with it in this manner. And then there is a general conduct question around conflict of interest, which is not the same as pecuniary interest. My suggestion would be that that would be best dealt with through the code of conduct bylaw, where you're dealing with a broader set of expectations for how a councillor conducts themselves as part of that. So certainly it can be. I just would suggest that the procedural bylaw is not where you would address that.
Fair enough. Then segueing back to that comment that I made, if we don't think that the act is restrictive enough, or we're not comfortable with it, can we not, in our own bylaws, have some additional, I don't want to say teeth to it, but some, like, I'm just concerned that if we just go by what's in the act right now, I don't think it goes far enough personally. And I've said that as part of the review to the minister and actually in person. And so what if the act as it's being modified doesn't go as sufficiently as far as the entire council would like? Can we change that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Reid, I think we would have to double check with legal on that, because the act also says that you are required to be in council chambers and do your voting. And so if we try to expand what pecuniary interest might be defined as, then we are limiting your ability to do your job as elected officials. If our bylaw supersedes that space, I would hazard to guess that we probably cannot in that instance.
Yeah, okay.
But again, we would get legal opinion should council wishes to
I
do
may
that.
just also note as well that this is, Ms. Knight, you mentioned from our legal counsel that municipalities in general are dealing with the ambiguity of the difference between conflict of interest and pecuniary interest, and there is legal practice and precedent around council members who have declared a conflict rather than pecuniary interest, and it has been acceptable, but there's some work to be done at the legislative level, I think, to really give some clarity there as well.
Right. Again, thank you. Great job.
Excellent.
Councillor Flowers.
I just made a few notes when I was looking it over. Is the wording changed to closed session now instead of going in camera?
Yes. I think closed session is just more plain language that we tried to include. It's more understandable to residents. In camera is a hard thing for some people to digest, and closed session has become the norm within the legislative world and the municipal world.
So we should start saying that in our motion.
Absolutely, we will once this bylaw is passed, Councillor Flowers.
Okay. And I like that the chair can debate and no texting during meetings.
Correct.
We didn't have that before, did we?
No, the previous bylaw didn't have any reference to cell phones or social media. I think it's becoming, again, a challenging space. We've certainly seen it from the FOIP world, where more of those conversations are being FOIPed by residents as they're watching either members of council or administration actively on their cell phones during meetings. I think it's imperative to have those cell phones set aside while you are doing the business of council.
It makes sense to me. So if we did see someone texting, then do we call it out at the time, or how do you deal with it?
I believe there's a point of order that could be called within your bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And dress code business casual? We didn't have that before either, did we?
We did not.
Something new. What does the word censure mean? Censure?
Censure.
Yeah.
What section are you looking at, Councillor Flowers?
47B1. Oh, CENSURE, censure. 4.7B1.
Keep the member quiet, I think is how I read that.
Did I write down that definition? In my office, it's written down. I believe it's to sort of reprimand, essentially.
Just never seen that word before. I wasn't sure what it meant. And from the public hearing, it said may abstain from voting after a public hearing if you weren't there. But didn't we say that for sure you couldn't be involved?
Through our last sets of public hearings, we've done some additional investigation. So when there is a recess and a reconvening of a public hearing, if a member of council missed the first day of public hearing but was completely present for the second day, that's where they may be able to vote. If you've missed the entirety of the public hearing, you are not allowed to vote on second and third reading. But where we've had people attend a portion, the MGA is clear that you can then, it would be up to the council member to determine whether they wanted to actively participate in the voting, if they were there for a portion of the meeting.
Makes sense. And the delegations, I agree that there might be times where they have to be turned down because it's not appropriate, but is there a way to make us aware so that we don't hear it from the public, that we would hear it from administration?
We absolutely could do that, Councillor Flowers. The delegation section is almost a carbon copy of our previous bylaw, because we had brought that forward to council in, I think it was 2021, to have you look at what that was, because there was lack of clarity in our previous bylaw in the delegation section. And at times, people wanting to come forward to talk with council, some of those items can be handled internally, administratively quicker than having them come and scheduled as a delegation. I think the only change we did to that wording is the word may as opposed to will. Again, trying to just add some flexibility that it may get forwarded and we may bring them forward. We also have in that section that to be clear that no decisions will be made. We are working very hard to have delegations come to the committee of the whole, but as more folks are coming forward wanting to come before council and provide updates on things council has supported them with, there will be some delegations that will come on a regular council meeting date, just due to the fact that we want to give everybody equal time to come and present to council. But we are very clear in that section that there will be no decisions made. So if there is a request, it would have to come back to a future meeting.
Okay. And I saw a note somewhere that only one person can present from the delegation, but we generally often have two people, like we did tonight with the tourism.
I will look through that section again and see. We try to have a designated speaker. I know for public hearings where there is a large group, we do try so that we don't end up with 55 speakers coming forward to council. And that has worked generally, but I will take another look through that just to make sure that we are clear.
Okay. And the committees, it said only Town of Cochrane residents, but we do have a rural member on the FCSS board.
The terms of reference stipulates, I believe, FCSS, and I think the SLS board have designated Rocky View residents, and so where that is part of the terms of reference, then that becomes the committees that can have the Rocky View residents apply.
Okay. And my last question was about the youth. I didn't see anywhere the age limit for being on committees.
18.
Is
It is in
it
here
in
for, to be a voting member on a committee, you have to be 18.
There's no way around it.
We have included non-voting youth in terms of reference for certain committees, including, I believe, the Parks and Rec Committee has non-voting youth, but they can't be voting on the committee as a youth member.
Oh, okay. But they can be on the committee. If the terms of reference as approved by council has been passed that way. Good, that was it. It looks good to me. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Yeah, a few comments from me. I mentioned this to you this afternoon, Jaylene, that reading through, it was like following a regular council meeting. So it's the procedural bylaw should actually allow us to do the work of council in a unencumbered fashion. I mean, there's guardrails that we need to stay in legislatively, of course, but I think upon first reading and second reading of this, I was like, yeah, this is kind of what we're doing. And I think, not kind of, it is what we're doing. And I feel like that's functioning well and it's working, other than some of the things that have been streamlined that I agree with. The order of business and the agenda items that you've outlined makes perfect sense. We've stumbled over that recently. So that I really appreciate that. The closed session makes sense as well. I like the notice of motion section that is really clearly outlines how and what we have to do as council members to action something. I think we've stumbled over that in the past, so I'm glad that's been clarified. And then I agree with the 6.4 addition. And I could go either way on section B, I guess. I think I understand why it's there. But I mean, as Mr. Derricott's pointed out, I mean, we've only encountered that, I think, once or twice in 7 years almost. So it's not really an issue in my mind. I don't see the value in calling a special meeting and getting everyone together to cancel a meeting. Like, to have a meeting to cancel a meeting just makes no sense. Might as well have the meeting. So I see where that, you know, is, could, you know, in a future mayor's role, maybe there's somebody who's not quite as awesome as I am, I guess, at it. I don't, hold your laughter, come on. But no, I do see the functionality of that. But then the last, Councillor Flowers, you brought up a couple things. The handheld devices, I see that, why we would put that in here. Again, my question was going to be, how do we enforce that? And you've answered point of order. Would that be something that we could maybe include in our, and I don't think it's a big problem, and I'm not trying to highlight something that I think that we have an issue with, but I do see how that could be perceived as an issue from the public, where two of us are texting one another and deciding something that isn't in an open session that we're required to talk about. Is there a function maybe in our code of conduct bylaw where that could be added as a breach, I guess?
I think what we'll be doing once this, once the procedural bylaw is adopted by council, the work on the code of conduct bylaw will then resume in greater effort. We have already started some of the revisions to that, but again, we're building in the notification piece to that as well. So I think that's something we can look at adding there, just to sort of double down. I think it's, especially with the streaming in this chamber, the cameras are coming down at you, so you know, residents see everything that's happening on the bench, and as well as on the administrative bench. And so I think we can have it in here and have it in the code of conduct bylaw as well.
Well, and I mean, it just speaks to the transparency and accountability, that type of thing. And maybe the reason I'm talking about code of conduct is maybe council just decides as a group that we, you know, set our phones over here and we don't touch them during a council meeting, and then unless it's an emergency at home, or, you know.
Well, as I said, once this bylaw is passed, I will be coming back to council to talk about some additional items that they may want to see in their code of conduct bylaw, and have sort of an initial discussion before a draft comes forward to council, to make sure we have captured collectively council's thoughts on what they may or may not want to see. Certainly our code of conduct bylaw was drafted when that requirement came in, based on the template the province had provided at that time, and we're certainly, I think, as municipalities across the province, gaining better understanding of what that tool is. And so council may have some significant pieces that they'd like us to include in there, and we'll, as we're, you know, starting the drafting of that, we will have that conversation with council.
Okay, thank you. I also agree with the addition of the business casual. I just think it's something, I mean, we're conducting the business of the community, and we need to, you know, present ourselves in that fashion if we want to accept that respect from those presenting to us too. So I really appreciate that addition. I don't actually have much more to add, other than a question on when. I couldn't find, maybe it was right at the beginning of the presentation, when you thought this would be coming back.
It will come back next Monday for first reading. So we will do first reading alone, and then we will come back in 2 weeks for second and third reading, again, to give all members of council the opportunity to review the bylaw thoroughly, and if they have any suggestions at second reading, they can bring those forward at that time.
Perfect. So
I would also say, we, you know, when we're drafting this bylaw, we're certainly thinking of how this council has implemented certain practices, we're also looking at future councils. So this council has, when you're speaking of the sort of business casual dress code, that has been a consistent theme from this council from when you were first elected in 2017. It has set a tone, and that's why this is in this particular procedural bylaw, so that future councils understand that is the tone for Cochrane.
Yeah, no, I thank you. I think that's a tone that well set. So we could, what is it, by the end of April, we should have without, council having changed something significant, we could have this passed by the end of April.
Correct.
Okay.
And then hope to have the conversation with council about what you want included in the code of conduct bylaw prior to summer break.
Perfect.
If I may, I apologize. There was one item that I just wanted to note because it has also been raised a few times over the last number of years, is virtual participation in council meetings, and this current bylaw, and please correct me if I don't articulate this as I read it, does not permit individual virtual participation in council meetings. So it allows for council meetings to be held completely virtual if council makes that decision, but individual councillors cannot call in or virtually participate in meetings. So I just wanted to highlight that is the nature or the state of how virtual meetings would be handled. I don't know, Jaylene, if you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I think sorry, I meant to highlight that for sure.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. Derricott, because it was actually something I was looking for. I'd highlighted it, but I missed it. I agree with that as a policy that, I think that that's very disruptive. And there's a whole lot of issues for virtual attendance around confidentiality that we can't control. And we stream, so anyone that's not in attendance can watch and hear what's happened. But participating virtually, I think, opens up a whole lot of pitfalls that I think other councils and other communities have encountered. Heard from colleagues across the province who are stumbling on this now. They've gone through COVID and allowed participation, and now they're having to back up and change that. So I fully support that as a way forward in this procedural bylaw. So thank you for highlighting that.
Well, and the challenge with some of that is that the streaming is about 45 seconds behind what's being said in this chamber right now. So it would be impossible for council to watch the streaming and be able to actively participate. Trying to do a hybrid of Teams or it continues to be choppy and certainly less efficient. And efficiency was certainly one of the things council had mentioned when they talked about getting this procedural bylaw done, is making sure we are utilizing the tools to keep the business you are doing done as efficiently as possible so that we can get through all of the very important projects and things that are being done in the town.
Well, and not the last point I'd make on that is that if you're away on holidays or you're away sick, then go be away or go get better from being sick and not try to participate and upset the flow of what's happening in person. So anyways, any other comments on that? Councillor Flowers?
I just wanted to add to that I was one of the ones that tried to call in and it just doesn't work. By the time my voice came, then you were talking about something else and I was interrupting and it was a mess. So unless the technology supports it, it just isn't possible. Although it would be nice at times, but that's all I have.
Okay.
So I think the only thing I lack clarity on at the moment is whether the majority around the bench would like section 6.4A and be included in their procedural bylaw when it comes forward for first reading on Monday.
I'm a thumbs up on that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
4 for 4. Okay, thank you for your presentation. That concludes, well, that would be the business section in our future meetings. So I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.